A quick visit. Prime Minister avoids residents of Zhanaozen. In shadows. Religious extremism as a tool of political engineering. The code to rule. Journalists speak out about professional code of ethics. Peace, labor, nation's leader. A society of universal labor, from social realism to social utopia. Hello, my name is Asylbek Abdulov. You're watching Vlast KZ on KPLus channel. The long-suffering Zhanaozen town survived a new disaster last week. Heavy rainstorms destroyed roofs on several buildings and power outage placed the town in total darkness for an extended time. Such was the precursor prelude to Prime Minister Karim Masimov's short visit to area. Dozens of Zhanaozen residents came to the city hall with posters saying, "If you're so tough, Karim, where were you during Zhanaozen events?" The premier is an office person who deliberately avoided this hot issue since the initial 8-month-long strike of oil workers, and especially its bloody climax last December. But the cabinet head did not actually plan to pamper locals with his talks, since he came to visit them for just an hour.
Zhanaozen greeted Prime Minister Karim Masimov on Monday morning with cordons and police units. Head of the Zhanaozen Department of Internal Affairs, Amangildi Sakhanov, personally made sure that no one could get close to the Prime Minister. Let's walk over there. Were you invited? Please explain why you won't allow us to cross the street. Because there's a meeting there. What kind of meeting? This kind. Downtown Zhanaozen is a restored square after the tragic events. White Lexuses are parked in front of the city administration. After the storm that passed the city outskirts and microdistricts, roofs collapsed even in new homes that were commissioned 2 years ago under the former mayor Sarbapev. I pay a $700 loan. One corner of this house is bent. Last night the mayor visited and told us he is not responsible for yesterday's events. Why? He says he doesn't know. Everyone runs away. Masimov was sought after all day by a group of around 40 people. Among them was Hassan Yusikenov, holding a banner in his hands bearing his son's name. His date of birth and death is December 16th. Atabergen was shot in the Zhanaozen square from the police gun. Hassan, like others, wanted to ask the Prime Minister a few questions. The Sarbapev was released yesterday. They say he's vacationing somewhere at a resort. Who is he? And now Kashorbayev was appointed counselor to the president. He disappeared for half a year, hid from the people. Why isn't he brought to justice? The Mangistau region governor Krembek Kashorbayev issued the order to celebrate Independence Day on December 16th, which is why the 25-year-old teacher found himself at the heart of the bloody events in the city square. Kashorbayev is now inaccessible. He holds higher office in Astana. Desperate to be heard, people began drawing banners, seemingly in hopes of at least being seen by the Prime Minister Masimov. A little boy is holding a sign saying, "Free my dad." Many women demand, "Give us housing." The most piercing of them is, "Blood does not forget." Why are the authorities silent? Oil is being pumped, empty wells are filled with water. Who watches over this? The earth is getting damp, houses are destroyed. This is a dangerous situation. When are we going to be a normal country? Our houses are flooded. Our neighbors are all officials and their homes were all repaired, while we are still sitting in water. I haven't slept until 4 in the morning, and all my food went bad in the water. Orak Sarbapev, the blood of innocent young victims is on your hands. He is guilty. He ordered the yurts to be set up, and now all the oil workers are in jail. How many innocent people died? Who will answer for all this? Let Sarbapev, Babakhanov, Kashorbayev be convicted. We will never forget December 16th. From now on, this is not a holiday. This small demonstration and its complete disregard by the authorities served as a vivid reminder of how Zhanaozen began. Last year, the oil workers' strike was ostentatiously ignored for almost 8 months. There was a clear understanding that the authorities had to react, but for some reason or another they didn't. More than likely, it has something to do with the fact that the oil and gas industry belongs entirely to the family of the head of state, hence the disregard. The opposition politician Vladimir Kozlov's wife is at the entrance of the Aktau jail, where her husband is currently being held. She recalls that after one of his initial visits to Zhanaozen, Kozlov returned convinced yet again that the authorities have no intention to notice the brewing conflict. Now Kozlov is being made into a scapegoat under Article 64. This week, none of the opposition politicians were noticed among the crowd of people, but the angered women still threatened to hold an outdoor hunger strike right on the city streets if they are not heard properly. I hope the question gets settled. If not, then all of us, the relatives of 13 people, will write a complaint letter and announce a hunger strike. We will stand here until everybody is released. On Monday evening, the cordon was removed. Karim Masimov left Zhanaozen. The visit was short. He promised only 2 women out of a group of demonstrators whose husbands were sentenced in the Zhanaozen trial that he would look into their cases. They confirmed that the Prime Minister did visit the city after all. The Prime Minister has left, but banners stayed on the fences. For instance, Kushurbayev, 164 Criminal Code. It stands for the following: former Governor Kushurbayev must stand trial for social hatred.
The main demand of Zhanaozen residents is the revision of court decisions over 37 oil workers and the former town mayor Orak Sarbapeyev, who was recently acquitted, and all corruption charges against him were dropped. Zhanaozen residents found particularly cynical the recent appointment of the former Mangistau region governor Karimbek Kushurbayev as an advisor to President Nazarbayev. It is safe to say that following lenient sentences and acquittals of former town heads, as well as rehabilitation of the governor, everyone forgot about the head of the state, saying that local authorities and oil company leadership bear equal responsibility for Zhanaozen tragedy. The president himself took a short vacation on July 18th, leaving everyone intrigued after giving a scolding to the National Security Committee the week before. The main reason for public criticism was the incident at the Tausamal village.
Sorry, I cannot help. You need to talk to the people who will come in the afternoon. 98 Seyfulin Street, Tausamal Village, Almaty region. The area has been sealed off for 2 weeks now. The investigation is underway. The criminal investigations were initiated on the counts of the explosion and terrorism. It is known that 8 bodies, weapons, and religious literature were found on the scene of the fire. The main version of the fire is the explosion of an improvised explosive device. There was a fire here, and everyone died. The house, which the terrorists seem to live in, belongs to the Kovalchuk family. Since March 2012, the property was leased to a businessman, Askar Kamalov, for $1,200 per month. Neighbors claim they don't know anything about him. People say that terrorists were storing weapons and ammo in the basement. I do not know. I was not a witness. I only heard there were 8 people. The shots were heard at 3 a.m. I heard it, to be honest. I live on the street. None of the neighbors will tell you anything because they are afraid for themselves. Lilia Petrovna was the only woman in the neighborhood who agreed to do an interview. There was a large belching fire. 2 explosions took place, one after another. It was impossible to get outside. And what were your neighbors like? I've never seen them, I don't know. Every day I wake up early in the morning. I only heard a loud baby's cry. Following the incident in the Tausamal village, President Nazarbayev criticized the work of law enforcement agencies. The National Security Committee got it the most. Due to the lack of professionalism, we lose staff. Because we do not work, we can't prevent what is going on. Therefore, as the President and the guarantor of the Constitution and security, I am dissatisfied with the work of law enforcement, especially the National Security Committee. Chairman of the Haji Union of Kazakhstan, Bakhtibay Aynabek, said that the security forces may initiate criminal proceedings and arrest people all they want, but it's not going to change the situation. The danger posed by religious extremist groups cannot be prevented by the government. They convict terrorists, but they don't fight with the cause. Extremist groups can be prevented by traditional Islam. A strong mufti is needed for this purpose to appeal to the public. Do we see religious figures where explosions take place? No, we only see the National Security Committee. This is Kazakhstan's version of Guantanamo prison under construction. Committee of Correctional System of the Ministry of Interior plans to keep individuals convicted for extremism and terrorism in this prison. According to various sources, currently there are 65 terrorists and nearly 300 extremists held in the correctional facilities in Kazakhstan. According to the newly convicted prisoner Vladimir Kozlov, believers fall into the ideal conditions for religious propaganda. From what I know, I see the results. More and more people, for the first time in their lives, begin to read prayers here and start believing in what their mentors do. Then they go to prisons, etc. It is obvious that such means of impact are counterproductive. If the authorities try to resist this, and that's a right thing because the desire to establish a Sharia state will eventually occur due to separatism and terrorism, then they need to choose the direction of resistance adequate for their efforts. For instance, to provide more information about what would the establishment of Sharia law mean for all of us, how much losses everyone would bear, even the regular Muslims. Murat Alibekov, the leader of the Muslim Union in Kazakhstan, believes that extremism comes with the lack of democratic reforms. People who do not find truth in the autocratic societies become potential members of radical religious groups. Alibekov stresses that the games of the political elite lead to the escalation of the problem. Religious extremism is implemented by contending groups from within the presidential administration itself. Such methods and technologies are used all over the world. There are reasons to believe that the religious extremism will be used very actively during the power contest. The wife of convicted Sayat Abraev, who was sentenced to 12 years for forming an extremist group, says that her husband represents traditional Sufism. She does not understand why the prosecution is based only on the fact that Abraev supposedly accused the Wahhabis. The criminal case was initiated upon request signed by drug addicts. 164 witnesses and 28 victims say they did not know Sayat Abraev during the trial. Some witnesses tried to advocate for Sayat, however the judge did not take this into account. After all, Abraev was found guilty. The first day of Ramadan, there is a brisk trade near the mosque. Prayer rugs, prayer beads, religious literature, hats, video and audio for the Muslims. These products are currently in high demand. The dining facilities expecting their customers after the sunset. Shinara Mankulova has been working in this shop for 6 months, selling goods for women. The clothing for Muslim women is imported from the Emirates, Malaysia, and Kyrgyzstan. Some clothes are locally produced as well. Shinara heard about what happened in Tausamal. She believes that Muslims have nothing to do with it. We have many customers not only from Almaty but also from other cities. They purchase modern clothing allowed by Sharia and various other useful things. Muslims are decent and peaceful people. I believe that there is no religious terrorism here. The first Friday prayers of Ramadan, the mosque is overcrowded. Many are bound to read prayers outside the mosque. Today, 19-year-old Shirkhan came to the Friday prayers for the first time. He wants to learn how to read the prayer and has far more questions than answers at this point. I came to the Friday prayers in this holy month. I heard a lot of information. Basically, it was about how we came into this world. They spoke about the natural sciences. These students are of Shirkhan's age. They came from Tajikistan to study in Almaty. Compared with their peers in Kazakhstan, these young people have been reading prayers since the age of 6. Citizens of the state bordering with Afghanistan believe that a religious threat is irrelevant in Kazakhstan. Tajikistan is different from Kazakhstan. We have a lot more believers. Our women are dressed differently, more moderately, if you will. The number of Muslims in Kazakhstan is increasing with years. I don't believe this will cause terrorist activity. In 2 years, over 100 crimes of terrorist nature were officially reported in Kazakhstan. The activities of 14 religious groups were banned. There are dozens of terrorist attack victims.
Next on Vlast KZ. The code to rule. Journalists speak out about professional code of ethics. Peace, labor, nation's leader. A society of universal labor, from social realism to social utopia. Stay tuned, Vlast KZ will continue in a couple of minutes.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublicas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы. В Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook. facebook.com/respublica.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
The short vacation of the head of the state could be seen as a political season finale and a precursor of upcoming staff changes. Presumably, this will happen in the context of and in accordance with the President's program article, Social Modernization of Kazakhstan, 20 Steps to the Universal Society of Labor. For more details, refer to the newspaper Казахстанская Правда from July 10th. The article also touched upon journalists. The Culture and Information Ministry, in conjunction with Reporters' Public Associations, was instructed to develop a draft code of journalistic ethics, as well as a plan for modernization of the domestic media.
I believe journalism is not some sort of an art. It's rather an acquired skill. No need to pretend and compare ourselves to Saltykov, Shchedrin, Pushkin, and Lermontov. We're just skilled people who can put a lot of words together to convey the information to other people. Journalist Gennady Beneditsky says his feed is what helps him earn money, since he writes his articles in the genre of investigative journalism literally on the go. His regular workday consists of numerous meetings with sources of information. In 20 years, Beneditsky has never revealed his sources, despite the fact that his articles happen to stir up quite a reaction every once in a while. Gennady developed a personal code of ethics, not to compromise his informants. In many respects, he owes his informants for the success, the scandals, intrigues, and the investigations. I have long been used to hearing how everything I cover in my articles is a lie, which means I badmouth the most honest and unselfish people who are not able to commit a crime and always ready to help a grandma walk across the road, even if she doesn't need to. It seems to be necessary for the journalist and presidential award winner Gennady Beneditsky to follow the journalist's code of ethics. He often risks his reputation by publishing various information, yet behind the proclaimed good intentions, the journalist sees only the simple desire of authorities to throw a rope around the neck of the press. There is an expression, King's entourage is in charge. Some people in the president's team are certainly discontent with the media, which creates problems and interferes with their lives and prevents them from making money. The media gets in the way while they are trying to rule the country in full. Therefore, this was only an attempt to put the noose around the media's neck in order to pull on the leash when needed. However, the idea about the code belongs to the president, Nursultan Nazarbayev. He mentioned the code of ethics for the journalists in the 18th paragraph of the Society of Universal Labor article in Pravda. What would it be is not clear yet. The Ministry of Information was assigned to develop the document. Journalists are already in anticipation. Perhaps this will be some kind of insanity. They would tag people with the "he violated the journalist code of ethics. That's it, go get him." Marat Asipov, the former editor of the popular daily newspaper, believes that this code will become a useful leverage and a harassment tool. Let's say the chief editor of some regional newspaper violates the code of ethics. Now the code requires laying him off. However, the chief editor turns out to be the mayor's relative, and the code becomes irrelevant. After the change of the newspaper founders, Asipov became temporarily unemployed. This is no coincidence, since the sharpest minds are usually the first candidates to lose the job with the new owners. This was a civilized way to destroy the biting edition. As the newspaper wasn't sued, it was simply resold. There are various attempts to put journalists in check by laying them off, changing the owners, incarceration, murder, but it is wrong and the West doesn't support that. There will always be some advocates of democracy to say that assaulting journalists like Akhmedyarov was not right. Presidential advisor Yermuhamed Yertizbayev had a bad image at the round table organized under OSCE sponsorship, where they discussed the possibility of changing articles of libel and defamation from the criminal into the civil code. Advisor Yertizbayev cited the Yugoslav dissident Milovan Djilas in the presence of Western observers. The worst torture for the human being is the inability to express his point of view. He writes that it is worse than physical torture, when a person wants to say something but he cannot talk about it or instead forces to speak someone else's point of view. Presidential advisor gave advice to the journalists as well, saying that there is no censorship in Kazakhstan, and if the literary fraternity wants to avoid criminal charges, they only need to appeal to the president and gather thousands of signatures. The code of ethics proposed by the president is just for fun, and complying with its orders is optional. If the president instructs me, I'm not going to ask questions since I am a civil servant. I get paid from the budget. I would certainly say, yes, sir, I execute. Whereas you don't have to execute. You're a journalist. Or do you depend on the authorities? At the round table, an independent journalist from Uralsk, Lukpan Akhmedyarov, suggested the opposite initiative, the code of honor for the establishment. A journalist should always be critical of the authorities. Only then the authorities will be on guard and will feel somewhat responsible. In the spring of 2012, Lukpan received 8 stab wounds and 2 gunshot wounds and miraculously survived. His colleagues and relatives linked the assault to the journalist's professional activity. In the meantime, the criminal case was initiated against Akhmedyarov. The head of the Department of Internal Policy of the West Kazakhstan region, Tlekamashov, required recovering $66,860 from the journalist. In this case, the journalist's code of ethics really looks like a useless trick. This code was drawn up on paper by the president's administration office in no time. Is anything going to change within our media market? I don't think so. KplusTV in Kazakhstan 1, with all the rubbish on the air, will remain the same. The nonsense of Kazakhstan Pravda is not going anywhere either. Lukpan Akhmedyarov invited the stage director Bulat Atabayev to compile and become a co-author of the Code of Honor for the authorities, and here's what came out of it. I suggest to draw up a code of honor for the authorities and to check whether they comply with this code, to identify which sanctuary they care for. In other words, what's the meaning of their lives? What are their spiritual absolutes or the life orientation? What are their spiritual foundations and attitudes in life? Some might object, saying that we already know who they are by their deeds, but we must have leverage over the authorities. It might work. It seems the idea of a code of honor for the authorities finds a much greater response in the media environment than the initiative of the President Nazarbayev. Only a few people can afford to talk about the code of honor in this country these days. When you have the budget money in your personal Swiss bank accounts, and yet you advocate for the journalist code of ethics, you should look at yourself instead. Turn the code on the authorities. That's the tactic in the ultimate fight for the freedom of speech chosen by journalists.
I'm absolutely positive that citizens of the country will support the policy of social modernization, concluded the president, and was apparently right. The vanguard of Kazakh society, represented by members of the ruling party Nuratan, took Nazarbayev's call as blueprint for action. Here is a quote from the piece. The utopian ideas with liberal and socialist trends are now in the past. Social realism is the new practical vector. End quote. Unfortunately, it is quite possible that under current conditions, social realism, the new global trend suddenly discovered by the ideologists from the president's administration, could quickly turn into another social utopia. All you need to do is learn how to stand on your feet all day, sometimes without eating. One of the most lively streets in Astana, the district municipal market, lined across the entire block are small crowds of people, mostly men. This is temporarily labor called Shabashka. Askar Karenov, unbearable heat notwithstanding, is in his usual place near the dilapidated wall in the backyard of the mall. A few years ago, he moved here with his family from the town of Zheskazgan in search of a better life. He was a businessman in his hometown. He had his own shop. Here he was initially employed by a construction company, but he didn't last long. I used to work at the construction site. They paid well for the first 2-3 months, then began delaying payments. Mediators are everywhere nowadays. You are forced to leave and come back here. According to the Astana Employment Agency, the capital city is host to nearly 23,000 people out of work with only 4,000 registered. Many take their time finding jobs. They're waiting for the highly paid offers, say the agency deputy director. At the same time, lack of experience or qualification does not enter people's minds. No one wants to perform physical labor nowadays. Why is there a deficit on construction sites? Today's unemployed person wants to sit in an air-conditioned office near a computer. Jobs are being created, but we see that not all unemployed people are seeking work. Unfortunately, the psychology is that one would rather loiter at the bazaar rather than seek new qualifications. But if we want to become a competitive nation, this psychology must be avoided. One must seek new qualifications and work at a factory, at a production facility. Old and young Kazakh citizens must not sit around and criticize everything, but go where the jobs are, where one can earn money. Askar Karenov is dissatisfied with his earnings. Life in Astana is expensive and the money he is able to save up is spent on the bare essentials. It gets even more difficult in winter when there is a lull in the construction sector. If he is able to receive an order once a week, then it's not so bad. Askar's children will finish school soon. To pay tuition fees, Askar would gladly heed the nation's leader's words and find a steady job. If they employed me, I would gladly work at a factory. You need to go through 2-3 months long requalification. There is no time for that. I need to feed my family. Olja Samar fully supports the nation's leader's words. He believes if a person is not lazy, then he will always find a way to feed his family. He scorns those unemployed people who complain about the lack of vacancies in their field and who are unwilling to retrain. Work nights, work evenings, moonlight if you're in that situation. If you're started a family without a certain set of skills, without a roof over your head, then work. According to the official statistics committee, unemployment is most prevalent in Akmola and Mangistau regions. The small village of Kuryk is the center of the Karakia region, making it exemplary in a way. Unemployment is the main issue here. After the Yersai-Caspian contractor workers' strike last May, almost all Kuryk residents who worked for the oil company were fired. Men go to town in search of work. They are told they're rebels. Our fate concerns nobody. No one cares that oil workers have families. Locals even travel to Aktobe region in search of work. Just like in Astana, the only way out here is temporary work. Salt marshes and a dry climate do not allow farm production. The land isn't suitable for cattle farming either. Aside from oil production, other enterprises are simply absent. The lot of Kuryk residents can only be classified as disastrous. We work where we can. We need to feed our families. They give you lemons, you make lemonade. What else can we do? There was a case when a baby died of hunger. A week passed since the release of the president's article on Kazakhstan's social modernization, but officials already report that measures are being taken. The capital branch of the ruling party proudly announces Astana residents will become the flag bearers on the war with unemployment. The meeting held on Wednesday passed in the best traditions of Soviet times. The youth, inspired by Nursultan Nazarbayev's decree, heated speeches and laudatory oaths towards the nation's leader. The first deputy chairman of Astana's Nuratan confidentially states that thousands of Astana residents are proud of the nation's leader's wisdom. He also reminded of the need for revolutions in certain fields only. The president clearly pointed out that Kazakhstan does not need political but economic revolution as well as scientific revolution and modernization of society. He notes that it is important for Kazakhstan to find a balance between economic success and a provision of public goods. As soon as the nation's leader's article appeared in newspapers where he angrily noted the large amount of youth unemployed, a coalition for universal labor was created the next day. Its members are determined. They claim it is unforgivable to be dependent and are themselves ready to start construction work so that housing problems are not shifted on the state's shoulders. Activists also promised to carry out a real blitzkrieg against parasitism. The modern world demands new approaches to issues of advocacy, thriftiness, hard work and a healthy lifestyle. We need a creative approach. The time has come for projects such as anti-laziness and labor punch. It turns out what stands behind these loud and threatening Soviet-style slogans are simply flash mobs. Organizers of such flash mobs intend to showcase the upside of working in factories. It is yet unclear how the idea will come to life. In the meantime, Askar Karenov doesn't believe the authorities promise to deal with unemployment. He judges by the amount of people who join him in the market square every day, rain or shine. Nazarbayev keeps ordering, but the ministers aren't performing, are they? If they did, you wouldn't see people out here. There's enough people out of work here, around 200 to 300 people, I'd say. On this note of mistrust, he says goodbye and hurries back to his spot. Another half a day of expectations is ahead of him, and if he's lucky, he will earn $20 a day, which is what an average moonlight earns. You were watching Vlast KZ on KplusTV channel. Trends, highlights and personalities of the past week. Goodbye.